Good evening, good one and all. This is Ganesh from CCB, very roll number double two BQ 1A0586. Today, my topic is about transaction management. Transaction management is nothing but simply a normal daily life task, but in dbms, transaction management is nothing but a set of operations used to perform logical set of works. Uh, and to perform a logical set of work, so the operations are read, write, commit, and rollback. These are the three basic operations which are used in this transaction management. So in this commands, read command is used to access data from the hard disk to the RAM, and write, which is used to send the data from the RAM to the hard disk. So in this case, in the case of dbms, here RAM itself means buffer storage, and after that commit command. So this commit command is used to save the data permanently if the transaction is successfully within the hard disk. And finally, rollback command. We all know rollback command, which is used to roll back to the last saved point. But here, the rollback point is reading the entire process from the beginning. If there is any failure or any mission is aborted in this case. So these are the specifications of these four set of operations which are used. We discuss about the states of transaction in the database. So first thing here is when we begin the transaction, first state of the transaction is active state, which means the transaction is currently being processed. There may be possibility whether it is failed, whether it is successful. So let's discuss about it. Here, the first state is the active state. This is a state in which the transaction is being executed. Thus, it is like the initial state of any given transaction. And comparing the possibilities, when we go to the partially committed state. So in here, our transaction is partially committed state. That whenever it executes the final operation, which means the operation has successfully completed and the output is there in it. But we currently kept it in a buffer place where we have to save the process. And there is another possibility if the transaction is failed. In this case, I mean, any part of the database recovery system fails. So then that transaction is in failed state. So when remember that in failed state, transaction cannot be proceeded. So it should be discontinued from that. So we will use the read or write commands. It may be either partially committed or if the transaction is failed, it will go to the failed state. If imagining that the part transaction is partially in committed state, in order to further proceed to the next state, we will check whether it is suitable to the output transaction that it is completely successful or not. If it is completed, then we will just put it aside by using the commit command. We will move it to the next transaction state called as a committed state as we can see here. So the next state is also failed state from partially committed state, which means some of the operations of the task are perfectly completed, but some of them are failed. So this will go to the failed state. And after reaching the committed state or failed state, if the transaction is in failed state, we will use the rollback command, which will go to the aborted state. And after that, if it is in the committed, we will just end the transaction. So this is the states of the transaction management system. So this is the diagram which we can see down right there. Now we will discuss about the properties of the transaction management system. For every transaction management system, every set of operation is said to be successful if it satisfied these four properties belonging to this transaction management system. So now we will discuss about it. We have encountered these properties, these asset properties during the starting state. Now we will rediscussing it, but we will use the same and different examples according which will match to the transaction management system. Now, starting, we will discuss about in the asset properties starting letter A, which means atomicity. Atomicity is nothing but if the entire transaction takes place at once or it doesn't happen at all. Simply, we can put it in simple words. You can say if the transaction is completely successfully performed, then we can say that the atomicity, I mean, the transaction is it has the property of atomicity. So we can even tell about the examples. First of all, we will continuously discuss about what are all the properties and we will deal the examples later. Coming to the next, consistency C. So the database must be consistent before and after the transaction, which means if there is a transaction between two bank accounts, if there is any debit operation considered to the first bank account, which is the funding one, and if there is any credit operation has been done between the second one, which is the gaining one, the amount which has been deducted in the first account should be updated by crediting it into the second account. So due to this, the data consistency will be available in the transaction management and there will be no errors occurred in. Coming to the third one, isolation. Isolation is nothing but independently doing the operations within the similar or same between the bounded bank accounts. Example, I'm saying it. According to this isolation, simultaneous operations should be done independently without connection between each other. Example, we can see if there is any bank account, like if there is a transaction between A, B, C bank accounts. A bank account is had a transaction between B bank account by crediting it 150 rupees, and simultaneously it is performing the task by giving it giving the transaction between the C account, transacting it 200 rupees. So this A is doing transaction with both B and C, but the transaction operations between B and between C both are not interfering with each other. This is what called as isolation. And we will go to the next one, which is durability. Durability, which is nothing but the changes like of a successful transaction occurs even if the system failure occurs, which means the data will be permanently stored in the database, which will never be removed. This is the perfect example of durability. Like using the transaction log, we can check whether what are the operations has been done within the same bank account or what are the things that have been done in it. This is what it comes under durability. These are the now we will discuss about the interesting like what are the benefits with this transaction management. So with this transaction management, there are so many schemes. So we will tell some little operations about it. So like when you're using the transaction management, CPU and disk utilization will be at its peak stage. Like transaction throughput will be good and the CPU can be used for other operations rather than writing or reading the disk. So an average response time for transactions, short transactions, they shouldn't be weighted more. And concurrent control manager, which we can be taken as an example for isolation in the asset properties. So this is a mechanism which is used to achieve isolation, like to control the interaction among the concurrent transactions in order to prevent them from destroying the consistency of the database. So here we can say that during the maintenance of different transactions between the same parent account, there will be no interference between the other two. This is what concurrency control manager is. This is the best example for isolation. Furthermore, discussing about the asset properties. So the schedules must be conflicted or view serializable and recoverable. For the sake of database consistency and preferable cascadeless, a policy in which one transaction can execute at a time and generates serial schedules but provides a poor degree of concurrency. So concurrency control schemes trade off between the amount of concurrency they allow and the amount of overhead they incur. So some schemes allow only conflict serializable schedules to be generated, while others allow view serializable schedules that are not conflict serializable. So this is what about transaction management. Hope you'd like this video, and this is what my seminar about transaction management. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, one and all.